are you, Nicole?
Colleen, you did it again. You got us live.
We did it 9 times in a row.
You're amazing.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to see you all.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us today. And if you happen to be listening to the recording, you are in for a good one.
Yes. So why don't I go ahead and just get us started because we've got a lot to cover. So for those of you who might be new to us, we always start by sharing the goal of our show. So ultimately, We Built a Bridge was founded with the core interest of creating a funnel of conversation that many hesitate to engage in. Christine is a life coach for women, and myself, Colleen, I'm a fractional chief culture and well-being officer to small businesses. And united, we offer different perspectives on communication, culture, and life fulfillment to guide you towards a life with integrity and curiosity. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you so much. So if you're tuning in live, you might notice that there is an additional person on with us today. And I just wanted to reassure you, no, Colleen did not get a short haircut. This is James Lawrence. I'm going to properly introduce him to you. James is the co-founder of Happy, which enables organizations to enhance organizational culture, communication, and manage effectiveness at scale. James brings 25 years of executive experience to Happy, honing a leadership philosophy that prioritizes people, believing they are an organization's competitive advantage. James, thank you so much for joining us today.
So excited.
Well, thank you. I don't think my bio's ever sounded better, Christine.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll take the round of applause.
I might have to bring you on the road with me.
Hey, tell me when and where, okay? I'll bring my 2 dogs, no problem. So I want to tell you a little bit about how I met James. So on December 1st, 2023, James Connection requested me. And he said he wanted to connect because he thought we had common interests in people first, high culture workplaces. And you know what? He was right. 14 days later, I was in the salon getting my gray roots colored. No shame, no shame. And I happened upon a post from James that day, and it absolutely inspired and captivated me. He told a beautiful story about his life transformation and how he told his wife he wanted to sell all of his companies to go after his passion. And there I was, my hair's all crazy, I'm under the heaters, and I DM'd him to ask his permission so that I could share his post. And he just couldn't have been kinder about it. And honestly, from that moment, I was hooked. And honestly, I've fallen for James's zest for creating, living, being truthful, and helping others to do the same. So we are just unbelievably thrilled to have him here today. But if you know our routine, you know that we first jump into our icebreaker. And today's question that everyone on earth is dying to know is, and James, this is being directed to you first. What was your first car? Did it have a nickname? And did you love or hate it?
Oh, gosh. Okay. So my first car was a pass down from my mom. It was a 1984 Buick Century station wagon. And it had beautiful tan plastic interior. And back then, our station wagons had wood on the side panels.
Yeah. So
I don't know if to say that I would love it or hate it. I certainly drove it like I hated it. I became later a car enthusiast, but I don't think I could attribute that to the Buick Century station wagon. I thought it was pretty fast at the time. My mom had a series of cars, none of which were super fun. So,
mom cars, right?
But I love the paneling. I mean, the paneling was like, and the tan interior, the way you described it.
They go together. I mean, how can you have fake wood side paneling without like a tan, plastic tan interior? It's like, perfect combo.
And now that's considered a super cool retro car. So really, you were driving one of the coolest cars then. You just didn't know it.
Yeah, I mean, I just missed, like, wagons have been cool forever, but I just didn't get it as a high schooler, right? Like someone just should have told me like how cool station wagons were, and I would have been like, this is the most awesome thing I'm ever driving.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And Carlos shared that
Yes.
his first car was a 72 Chevy Nova Coupe. Oh my gosh.
Well,
Like,
that is a cool car. So that's a real cool car. I mean, I guess the wagon's okay.
and then
Okay.
Terry Swope talked about having a 1972 Maverick with honeybees painted on the side and huge CB antenna on the top.
It's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah,
So,
the 84 wagon doesn't really compare to a Maverick. Maverick's pretty cool also. So
well, wait until you hear mine. So, mine was first my mom's car. I'm pretty sure it was a 1978 Celica. It was white and it was stick shift. So, it was my mom's car. And then she handed it down to my sister, who's 3 years older than me. Now, I don't think it's any secret to anybody in my family that my sister really didn't take good care of the car. So by the time I got to it, there were literally mushrooms growing in the feet of the passenger seat.
oh no.
And it backfired. So all my friends, so I'm in high school, and I was just so excited to have a car and a stick shift. I was like, I can so rock this thing, right? And my friends would know when I was leaving school because every time I went into second gear, bam, it would backfire. They're like, there goes teen.
That's amazing. The mushrooms, that's
gosh.
crazy.
Yeah, I got rid of them. But yeah, so that was my first car. Colleen, how about you?
All right. So, gosh, I do feel like I should have talked about the minivan that I, did receive keys to, but that is not where my mind went to my first car. It went to the 1986 black Ford Escort that we called the Tin Can. So here's the thing. You did not need a key to get into this thing. All you needed to do was wiggle the handle on the driver's door and that could get you right in. So I'll admit I did not love it at all, but I also didn't buy it.
Right.
Therefore, the option was to find the appreciation for it, which I did.
That's right. Hey, you know what? Back then, if you didn't have to pay for it, I mean, it makes life so much easier. I did have to pay for my car insurance, but you know what? I appreciated that. Taught me responsibility.
Car
I think
insurance,
there's like some, half the people that tell a story about their old car, it's like the door lock. It's always about the door lock. And like half the time it's like the door would never lock and you couldn't lock it. And then the other half the people had the door that was always locked. And it was like, well, I could, and like someone was knocking on the window and you had to go through the car to open it from the inside.
Oh my gosh.
I think we could have an entire episode on the cars.
Hey, you know what? Anything's
That's fine with
possible.
me. I love cars.
I know you do, James. All right, but why don't we do this? Let's transition. So when Christine kicked us off, she mentioned this post of yours, right, that she connected with. And I do remember reading this post as well. So what we would love is for you to share more about that post with everyone that's listening today and invite them into what you've learned throughout your journey.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's interesting. So I'm 47. So I dropped out of college my junior year, which was a tough thing to do. Both of my parents I had two PhD psychologist parents and psychoanalysts, actually. So I don't recommend going home from school and telling your two professor PhD parents that you're dropping out of school. It doesn't like land all that well. I will say that my mom got pretty upset. And then my dad, on the way out of the restaurant, he kind of put his arm on my shoulder and kind of looked back at me. And like, of course, during dinner, he had to like read me the riot act. But like, as we were walking out, he kind of turned back to me. He's like, "You're going to be okay, kid." And I'm like, thank God, like got a little bit of like the thumbs up from dad in the background. Like, and of course, life's been fine, but it's been a interesting journey about learning to find what you love and being willing to make the tough choices. Like life's tough. Like, and one of the biggest takeaways I think that I've had in the last 15 or 20 years is that if you expect everything to just be easy, like, you set yourself up for failure because life is difficult. And it doesn't mean it's not beautiful. It's just difficult. And I think a lot of people, and I would put myself in that equation, you kind of get yourself in a point of comfort and a point of familiarity. And you don't necessarily look in the mirror every day and ask yourself, like, what is your life? Where are you going to invest your time? Because time is like your biggest commodity. And for me, it was 15 or 20 years of figuring out like, the person I wanted to be and then how to make that investment, right? Like that, it's the most important investment you're going to make. Cause like money, you can't take money with you. And, there's a lot of stories of people losing their fortune and making, finding a new job and, making a bunch of money, and like that can come and go, but like time doesn't come and go. And so like, are you pursuing something that you're passionate about? So, I mean, that's really like my story in a nutshell, is just really one of trying to like understand, what are those things that I most value? And, I think in life, and Christine and I talked about this quite a bit on our first phone call, you get into the inertia of your life. And, sometimes you find that most precious commodity is it's like an hourglass, and like, you don't realize like the sands of time don't stop. And so if you're not doing something that's like really purposeful, you're really, I don't want to use wasting your life, but like you're really losing an opportunity, right? Maybe the most opportunity that you'd ever have.
So I have a follow-up question for you, Christine, unless you were ready. I have a question.
I would like you to go first, Dr. Colleen.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you addressing me that way. So did you feel that early in college? Like you already, I guess what I'm trying to ask is you knew your junior year that you wanted to drop out, you wanted to leave college. So were you already kind of feeling that this is not what I'm meant to do, or I feel like there's more for me? Like what was that moment that made you decide this isn't for me?
That's a great question. I think for me, I came from an academic background with both my parents. And I think there was this underlying expectation, like so many of us have, like with our, as kids, this expectation. And that expectation was like that my parents expected me to probably go to 4-year school, graduate, probably go to graduate school. And, I was just an entrepreneur, and I just loved building things, and I just didn't want to wait. I started a business when I was 18 out of my dorm room, and, my business was kind of taking off, and I just loved every moment of it. And I just like my story just wasn't in a classroom. Like it was just in the classroom of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt shame for a long time. And like, this has been really hard for me to talk about. Like, as I've gotten older, I've been more open with it, but like, I felt a lot of shame from dropping out of school. Like I was a failure. And even like when I got married, I told my wife, Melissa, like a regular theme was like, I need to go back to school. I want to go back and get an MBA. And my wife would be like, well, you kind of have an MBA, but you've, been running businesses for 20 years.
Yeah.
But it was like overcoming that sense of shame of like what someone else's expectation for me was, versus just kind of like being more willing to just let my own story and follow my own kind of path. And I was kind of, not that my parents did it intentionally, but I was kind of like living their path instead of like my path. And so I think it was probably like my mid 40s. I lost my mom recently, last year. And it was like, it's probably been in the last 3 or 4 years where I finally just been like, I'm good. Like, I'm good. Like, I'm okay. Like, I don't have to live like the life that maybe they envisioned, but like, I can kind of make my own path.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting how we make these assumptions in how we're supposed to be maturing in life based on that path, right? We all know the path. It's go to college, get a degree, potentially get into a good relationship, get married, start, there's this path that's been in existence for decades. And, there's been a lot of change with that. There's been a lot of women going, tiny bit off topic there, but with this, but there's a lot of women like, I don't want to have kids and I need that to be okay. And that's steering off of that path. And, this is happening for entrepreneurs that are saying, I don't need to go to college because I'm so smart. I already know what I want to do. And I love that you spoke to that even with the amazing educational background between your parents, that you You were like, nope, I'm steering. I'm changing directions. And I mean, I just love that. And so I want to kind of go into it. Colleen, did you have any other questions? No.
I can
Okay.
save mine till the end. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. I'm kidding. Go.
So, this kind of leads me into the next question. So I noticed the other day that you posted, this might have been yesterday. The opening of your post was a quote. And the quote was, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that was by C.G. Jung, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yep.
And, I mean, that really spoke to me, especially knowing the question that Colleen and I wanted to ask you next, which is, what holes did you see in business and in life that led you to create your product, Happy Companies? Now, I have a feeling that quote is very relative.
It's interesting. So this is a little bit of a story, so you'll have to be patient with me. But back about 15 years ago, I really started to recognize that I wasn't necessarily the leader that I felt like I was capable of or I wanted to be. And I had some blind spots. And, that process for me led me to finding an executive coach or a leadership coach. And his name was John Delmatoff. And I owe him a lot and probably owe him, the vision behind Happy. And, none of that would have happened without John. And John really, really helped me. He helped me understand, that I didn't always behave in a way to get the kind of outcomes I wanted with my team. And, one of my blind spots, for example, was, just really not understanding that the role of a leader is to be a servant or a supportive leader. I'd say 15 years ago, having the answers was maybe more important to me than like help my people, my team find the answers. And so I recognize it, but I didn't really know how to fix it. So John helped me with, learning. I learned DISC for the first time, and he helped me kind of understand how to understand others more effectively and how to read people. And so kind of finding Happy was really a 15-year process of starting with just the value of getting a coach and just being coachable. Like that was a big thing, right? Is just being coachable. And I don't know how coachable I was. Like, I don't know how good of a listener I was. And so I think if I had the coach maybe before that, it wouldn't have landed because I was ready. I was like ready for it. Mm-hmm. And so I think to answer your question of like this kind of narrative or how I ended up with Happy, it was like, I wanted people to find the aha moments that I got working with a coach, but I also recognize that like most organizations aren't going to spend thousands of dollars or $300 an hour on a coach for every single employee in their company. Right. And, my co-founder and I probably about 5 or 6 years ago started talking about like, how do we, like, is there a way to use technology and behavioral science to help like everybody in an organization, not just maybe like the CEO or the C-suite that could afford like maybe that higher end one-on-one coaching. And it's funny, I do believe that human coaching is incredibly valuable, but I'm going to turn around and ask you a question. So in most companies, coaching happens every day. In fact, in virtually every company. Who do you guys think does the coaching in most companies?
Do you want to go, Christine?
You go first. I have a feeling you have an answer.
Well, I honestly, where my brain was going is, I know you're not supposed to ask a question with a question, but I wouldn't be me if I didn't ask a question.
Leave it to you to break the rules.
I know, I'm always shaking it up. I don't know. I don't know if I agree that there is a lot of coaching going on in a lot of companies. I think it's a lot of telling. I think it's in which it's not the word I want, but I think it's a lot of like, this is what you're doing. I don't know if there is a lot, but if I was going to answer your question and the question that was posed, I would say leadership.
Yeah. So I would say like, that's the normal answer that I would typically hear, leadership or HR. Christine, who do you think actually does the coaching in most organizations?
I think people that are in your same line of position. So let's say you're an account manager and you're working with 6 other account managers. I think they're coaching each other because they're in it. They know what they're going through. They're the ones that are hearing from each other, like, oh, I'm really stressed about this client. And they're the ones saying, hey, I know, I get it. I think that's where the coaching happens. And so for me, even when you were talking about coaching being offered or affordable, mostly for C-level, it's the, I don't like to say lower, but it's the positions that are more in that starting position or in the mid-range that really, really benefit from it.
Yeah. So Christine gets the golden star for today.
As does Terry. She said peer to peer.
Is there like some button on this app that I can press and there's like a bunch of stars that float over her head right now?
Here.
No, but she's, oh, there you go. Yes, that's what you get. You get a happy coaster.
That's right. I did.
Always ready with the props. Look at her go. But no, you're right. So in most organizations, what the data and research says is it's your best friend at work is what Gallup has kind of popularized that as. And it's true. It's whoever you have psychological safety with. And you hope it's at least a peer, but really it's somebody you trust inside the organization. And, that's to help you. It could be even just with your job, but a lot of it's it's more work relationship coaching, like, help me navigate through this. And so, having a peer coach you can be valuable, but it also depends on like, are they biased also? And, what resources do you have to understand someone else at work? And so it really comes down to like, how do we help people have better relationships at work? And so one of the things we recognize with Happy, there's a lot of great assessment tools out there, but virtually all of them land in a 40-page PDF. And so, anybody that's listening to this probably has like a DISC assessment or an Enneagram or a Myers-Briggs or, someone's assessment. And it's usually in like somewhere in the bottom of their like desk drawer, or it's in their email somewhere in some like saved folder. But if you said like, hey, I need to read I want to look up my assessment or my work style, or, hey, I want to look up Christine's, like that's hard to do when it's a 40-page PDF. And so part of like our technology was just how do we create accessibility where anybody in the organization, if they want to improve their working relationship or they want to get some coaching or get an insights on someone, just how do we make that like easy and seamless? I mean, what I hear from CEOs, and I'll tell you something really fun. COVID wasn't fun. But in 2020, I had just kind of finished selling my business, and I set up about 40 focus groups and talked to more than 500 CEOs and heads of HR in like a year and a half period. And I just asked them like a ton of questions about, the people challenges that they had, what was most common, how they solved them. And one of the things that we heard over and over again was like, work relationships are kind of left up to the employees to figure out. And nobody has the bandwidth or the budget to really deploy the kind of managerial coaching that they want. And so I heard CEOs say over and over again, like, one of the very most important things is to improve communication and manager effectiveness. That was like two of the main things. And then I said, well, why haven't you? And they go, budget and bandwidth. Mm-hmm. And so you hear these things and then you're like, well, can I build a tool? Can we use technology to like address those things? And so that's kind of where it came from. It was like just trying to solve a hole that was, that existed.
Yeah. I want to make talk about one of the comments that came in from one of our listeners, Lauren. She said, the last company I worked for had an actual in-house coach. She was phenomenal. And it was so refreshing to be in a corporate environment that offered that support. And I mean, I can picture that, but based on the number of employees, right, at this company, and so that's one-on-one individual coaching, which yes, is super important. But this is what I love about Happy and your product is that it gives each employee an inside look to how other people on your team, leadership, how they operate and what you can present to them that is going to offer the most success within your experience there. And that's what's different about having a one-on-one coach and Happy companies. And I love it so much. I wish I had an opportunity to work with a product like that.
Well, the thing about, look, what I would say is that great coaches are always going to change lives. And like, I don't know if you ever watched like about 1 a.m, you'll be watching like Discovery Channel or something, and it'll talk about like how a bird flies. And like, you're like, wow, this is amazing. Like, the mechanics of how a bird flies, how it moves its wings. And you're like, today's technology can't even emulate how a bird flies. Like, we have an airplane, but it doesn't use like the same technology, but it's like how much engineering is based on nature. And so one of the things that I think we've tried to do is look at what do the world's best coaches do, and what do they do differently, and how does a great coach operate? And
hey, listen, we can have a one-off when this is over.
No, but the thing about a great coach is it's contextual, meaning like a great coach listens to you and learns you.
Yeah.
And then when they give you guidance and insights, it's personal, right? They're not just giving you generic advice. They're really seeing the real you. Yeah. And so that's kind of like with a Happy technology, because when you have Happy in a company, you have Happy understands everybody's work style. So all of the coaching is personalized and contextualized, which is totally unique. No other technology really does that. But it was something that we thought of, like, what does a great coach do? It's always personalized insights. But I'll give you one other thing that's interesting. So when you start really studying how people learn, the data is really clear. Continuous learning gets just unbelievably better results than episodic training. And that would mean like, hey, and I kind of do this little analogy with people. Like if I were Colleen, if I were going to go to you and I said, hey, from 7 to 9 p.m. tonight, I need you to participate in a workshop with me. 7 to 9 or 7 to 9 o'clock. And it's going to be on negotiating with Japanese business people. So that means no NCIS, no dinner. We're going to do, yes, negotiating with Japanese business people. What would you tell me? Like, how excited are you to do that tonight? Not that there's anything wrong with the subject matter, but like.
Yeah, would not be excited at all. Yeah.
Now, what if I told you that you and I were flying to Tokyo in the morning and we were going to negotiate the biggest deal in Build a Bridge? We're going to take Build a Bridge to Japan, to a big network, and we were meeting with a Japanese TV network. Would you be interested in the workshop?
That would be amazing. Yes. Yes.
So that's the concept of the education being adaptable to something like that's important to you at the moment. Like there's a way for you to apply it. Yeah. And so the two things we learned is people learn and they invest in things that have some kind of like actual application that will help them. And when it's just abstract, it's like hard to get someone's attention, but when it's like really applicable. And the second thing is continuous learning versus episodic learning. Episodic learning being like, hey, one time a year, we're going to talk safety training, just once a year, versus every Friday, we're going to spend 10 minutes talking about safety. And the science is really clear on this. Every week, spending 10 minutes on something has way more recall and impact than doing one session a year.
Yeah.
And that's why great coaching, whether it's a human or it's Happy, great coaching is insights and nudges weekly. And it's not just one session on how to be a better leader. It just doesn't land.
Yeah. So, James, remember, I'm the timekeeper trapper. Or the trapper
time trapper keeper. Time trapper keeper.
I don't even know what I'm called. I said it wrong, which should come to no surprise. But seriously, I mean, I think we could talk about this for another 30 minutes. It's just a fascinating product. I know Christine and I are just like feel so strongly about it. I'm so glad that you came and like had the opportunity to share with everyone that is joining us today, because I'm also hoping that they reach out to you to learn more about it, because it's just that cool. Also, I love that it's Christine had said it. It's the opportunity for everyone, not just leaders, not just X, not just Y. It's for everyone. And organizations are made up of a lot of different people. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, especially if you're a young employee, or new in your career. I think there's really something to be said for the fact that it's harder today, especially in remote and hybrid work environments. It's a lot harder to get started in your career, like to build a rapport with your manager, to, understand how to navigate your work relationships. And so, I mean, we're not the only tool out there that does it, but I think like looking at people new in their career is really important.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, awesome. So thank you so much for joining us today. It was so great to have you. So as we wrap up in 1 minute, I'm going to say it fast. We go live. We go live every other Thursday from 12 to 12:30 p.m. Eastern. As you can see, we are as predictable as Chicago dyeing their river green every year for St. Patrick's Day. So with that, we would love to have you join us on March 21st at 12 p.m. It's our 10th episode, and we are so excited to share what's ahead for us at We Built a Bridge. So thank you again so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you, James. Thanks, everybody, for joining.